No one had heard from Vega 12 in 50 years. Now it was screaming. Captain Jurex of the Qatari salvage patrol ship Narrow Fang stared at his communications console with the particular expression reserved for equipment that had clearly lost its mind. The signal pulsing across his screens shouldn't exist, partly because Vega 12 was supposed to be empty space, and partly because the transmission was in Old Terran Standard, a language that had dead longer than most civilizations had been spacefaring. "Captain," said Lieutenant Threx from the sensor station, his chitinous plates clicking with nervous energy. "The signal is definitely coming from the Vega system." Grid coordinates match historical records for the old Terran colony. "Historical records that list it as abandoned and void," Jurex replied, running a scaled hand over his dual-crested skull. "Remind me, Threx, when was the last time an abandoned system started broadcasting in a dead language?" "Never, sir, which is why this is either a trap, a ghost, or evidence that our equipment has developed a sense of humor." Jurex studied the readout. The signal wasn't a standard distress call, it was something else entirely. A warning, perhaps, or an invitation. In the Qatari salvage business, both were usually the same thing. "Options," he asked his small crew. "We could ignore it," offered Navigation Officer Kess from her station. "Continue our sweep of the Helix Nebula debris field. Safer, more profitable, significantly less likely to involve things that shouldn't exist." "Or," Threx said slowly, "we could investigate. Terran technology from before the collapse commands premium rates. If there's an intact ship broadcasting, it could pay for our next 3 expeditions. And if it's a trap, then at least we'll die rich," Threx said cheerfully. "Or we'll die confused, which is really the same thing in our line of work." Jurex considered this logic, which was depressingly sound. The Qatari salvage guilds operated on a simple principle. If it was valuable and abandoned, it belonged to whoever could carry it away. The fact that Terran technology had been specifically banned by the Concordat only made it more valuable and more dangerous. "Set course for Vega 12, he decided, "but keep our jump drive spooled and ready. I don't want to become part of whatever ghost story is broadcasting from dead space." The Narrow Fang banked smoothly toward the Vega system, its sleek hull cutting through space like a blade through darkness. Behind them, the familiar trade routes of civilized space grew smaller and dimmer, until they were alone with the stars and the impossible signal that grew stronger with every passing hour. "Signal's getting clearer," Kess reported. "It's not just a beacon. There's actual data embedded in the transmission. Looks like ship identification codes, manifest information. Captain, this is a cargo freighter broadcasting its status." "A 50-year-old cargo freighter," Jurex corrected. "Broadcasting from a system that's supposed to be empty." "Maybe it's just late for delivery," Threx suggested. "You know how Terrans were about punctuality." "I know how Terrans were about a lot of things," Jurex muttered. "Most of them involved being either impossible to kill or impossible to understand, sometimes both." The Vega system materialized on their long-range sensors. A yellow star with 7 planets, 2 asteroid belts, and 1 massive object that definitely didn't belong there. According to their instruments, it was a Terran heavy freighter, roughly 800 meters long, drifting in a stable orbit around Vega 12's third moon. "Identification confirmed," Kess announced. "TSV Coriolis, Registry Terran Space Navy, commission stardate 2387. Last known position, this system. Last status update, 53 years ago. And it's been broadcasting this whole time? Negative. Signal originated approximately 6 hours ago. Something woke it up." Jurex felt the familiar chill that came with encountering something that shouldn't exist. In his 15 years of salvage work, he'd learned to trust that feeling. Ships didn't wait 50 years and then suddenly decide to start talking. "Any signs of active crew?" "Life support is minimal but functional. No biosigns detected, but there's significant electronic activity throughout the ship. Whatever's running things in there, it's not organic." "Terran AI," Threx said with distaste. "Probably gone mad from isolation. They say Terran artificial intelligences couldn't handle being alone." "They say a lot of things about Terrans," Jurex replied. "Most of them turn out to be wrong, usually in expensive ways." The Coriolis grew larger on their view screen, a massive wedge of metal and ceramic, its hull scarred but intact. Emergency lights blinked along its superstructure in patterns that seemed almost like Morse code, if Morse code could be melancholy. Captain, Kess said quietly, I'm reading power signatures consistent with active defensive systems. This ship isn't just broadcasting, it's watching us. Weapons? Unknown, but the targeting scanners are definitely tracking our approach. Jurex drummed his claws against his command chair. Approaching an unknown Terran vessel was like playing cards with a deck that might explode. You could win big, but the house always had an interesting definition of victory. Open a channel, he decided. Let's see if anyone's home. Channel open, sir. TSV Coriolis, this is Captain Jurex of the Qatari vessel Narrow Fang. We received your transmission and are responding under salvage protocols. Please identify yourself and state your situation. Silence stretched across space for nearly a minute. Then, crackling through the comm system like a voice from beyond the grave, came a response that made everyone on the bridge freeze. Oh, hello there, said a cheerful female voice in perfect galactic standard. How lovely to have visitors. I was beginning to think I'd been forgotten. Again, please state your intentions and do try to be honest. I've become quite good at detecting lies over the past 50 years. Jurex exchanged glances with his crew. The voice was definitely artificial, too precise, too perfectly modulated, but there was something almost human about its inflection. We're a salvage crew responding to your distress signal, he replied carefully. Oh, that wasn't a distress signal, the voice corrected pleasantly. That was more of a please don't shoot me signal. Though I suppose the distinction is somewhat academic when you're drifting alone in space for half a century. Are you planning to shoot me? Not immediately. How refreshingly honest. In that case, you're welcome to dock at Bay 7. I've taken the liberty of pressurizing it for your convenience. Do try not to track mud on the carpets. I've just finished cleaning them. Well, I finished cleaning them 47 years ago, but the principle stands. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Narrow Fang in thoughtful silence. Sir, Threx said slowly, I think that ship's AI has definitely gone insane. Probably, Jurex agreed. The question is whether it's harmlessly insane or homicidally insane. Only one way to find out, Kess pointed out. That, Jurex sighed, is exactly what I was afraid you'd say. Docking with the Coriolis felt like shaking hands with a sleeping giant. You weren't sure if it was friendly, and you weren't entirely convinced it was asleep. The massive freighter's docking bay opened with mechanical precision, guide lights activating to draw the Narrow Fang into its cavernous interior. As they settled onto the landing platform, Jurex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being swallowed. Atmosphere is stable, Kess reported from her environmental station. Gravity at standard. Temperature is actually quite comfortable. Either this ship has been maintaining life support for 50 years, or someone's been very recently. Motion sensors? Jurex asked. Nothing organic, but there's definitely mechanical activity throughout the ship, lots of it. Jurex suited up in his salvage gear, reinforced armor, portable atmosphere, and enough scanning equipment to analyze a small moon. His crew did likewise, though Threx seemed more focused on his sidearm than his sensor package. Remember, Jurex told his team as they approached the airlock, Terran technology is valuable but unpredictable. Don't touch anything that glows, hums, or looks like it might be thinking. And if something starts talking to you that isn't me or Kess, don't answer until we've determined whether it's friendly. What if it's unfriendly? Threx asked. Then we run. Quickly. The airlock cycled open to reveal a corridor that belonged in a museum, or a mausoleum. Emergency lighting cast everything in pale blue, and the air had that peculiar stillness that came with spaces that had been uninhabited for decades. Yet everything was pristine, as if the ship had been frozen in time the moment its crew disappeared. This is weird, Kess whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the empty passage. Where's the decay? The dust? Ships don't stay this clean unless someone's maintaining them. Maybe someone is, Jurex replied, studying his scanner readouts. I'm picking up active cleaning drones, maintenance bots, even what looks like a full janitorial AI suite. This ship has been taking care of itself. They moved deeper into the vessel, following signs toward the command deck. The corridors were wide enough for a small parade, with occasional viewports that showed the star field outside. Everything was built on a massive scale, Terrans, apparently, had never believed in doing anything small. Captain, Threx said suddenly, stopping in front of what looked like a blank wall section. My motion sensors just spiked. Something big just moved behind this bulkhead. Before anyone could respond, a section of the wall slid aside with a soft hydraulic hiss. From the hidden alcove emerged something that made all three Qatari take an involuntary step backward. It was roughly humanoid in shape, but clearly mechanical, 2 meters tall, with a sleek chrome chassis and optical sensors that glowed with soft blue light. Its movements were fluid, almost graceful, as it stepped into the corridor and regarded them with what might have been curiosity. Defense drone, Kess breathed. Armed, powered, and looking right at us. The drone stood perfectly still for several seconds, its sensors sweeping over them. Then, to everyone's surprise, it stepped aside and gestured politely down the corridor. Did it just invite us to proceed? Threx asked. I think it did, Jurex replied, which is either very good or very bad. Why can't it be both? They continued down the corridor, now aware that they were being watched. More drones appeared at intervals, some from hidden alcoves, others simply materializing from side passages. None of them were aggressive, but all of them were clearly tracking the visitors' progress. It's like they're escorting us, Kess observed. Or hurting us, Threx countered. Let's hope it's the first one. The command deck, when they finally reached it, was a testament to Terran engineering philosophy. If something was worth doing, it was worth overdoing spectacularly. The space was enormous, with multiple levels connected by ramps and bridges. Holographic displays showed system status reports, navigation charts, and what appeared to be entertainment programming in 17 different languages. At the center of it all was a pillar of crystalline material that pulsed with internal light, the ship's AI core, clearly active and clearly aware of their presence. Well, said a familiar, cheerful voice from speakers throughout the room, you made it. I was beginning to worry you'd gotten lost. The ship is rather large, and I'm afraid my drone companions aren't much for conversation. Would you like some tea? I've been brewing it for, several decades now. It should be quite robust by this point. Jurex approached the AI core cautiously. You're the ship's artificial intelligence? I am Amari, administrative AI for the TSV Coriolis, and apparently the last functioning piece of Terran technology in this particular corner of space. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Visitors are so rare these days. By which I mean you're the first visitors I've had in 53 years, 4 months and 12 days. But who's counting? You are, apparently. Well, when you've been alone as long as I have, you tend to keep track of these things. Time becomes rather elastic when you don't have organic beings to schedule around. Speaking of which, what brings you to my humble floating tomb? Threx bristled at the casual tone. We're here on salvage business. This ship was declared abandoned. Oh, it absolutely was, Amari agreed. My crew evacuated during the unpleasantness. I was told to maintain station and protect the cargo until further orders. I'm still waiting for those orders, as it happens. What cargo? Jurex asked. There was a pause that lasted just a fraction too long. Nothing that would interest salvagers, I'm sure, Amari said finally. Just some old files and obsolete equipment. Hardly worth the fuel you've spent getting here. Let us be the judge of that, Threx said, his hand moving toward his scanner. We'd like to conduct a full survey of the ship. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Amari replied, and for the first time her cheerful tone had an edge to it. Certain sections of the ship are restricted. For your safety, you understand, and mine. Restricted how? Let's just say that some doors are better left unopened, some secrets are better left buried, and some AIs are better left with plausible deniability about what they've been protecting for the past 50 years. Jurex studied the AI core, noting the way its light patterns had shifted to something more guarded. Amari, what exactly are you protecting? The innocent, she said simply, just like I was programmed to do. The only question is whether you're going to help me or get in my way. The command deck fell silent except for the soft hum of active systems and the distant whisper of recycled air. Jurex found himself in the peculiar position of negotiating with an artificial intelligence that had been alone for longer than some civilizations had existed, and which was clearly hiding something significant. Amari, he said carefully, we're not here to interfere with your mission. We're salvagers, not pirates, but we need to understand what we're dealing with. What you're dealing with, Amari replied, her holographic avatar materializing near the AI core. A tall, slender woman with kind eyes and an expression that managed to be both welcoming and warning at the same time, is a ship that has been maintaining a very important secret for a very long time. The question is whether you're the sort of people who can be trusted with secrets. That depends on the secret, Threx said bluntly. Does it? How refreshing. Most beings claim they can be trusted with anything, right up until they can't be trusted with the smallest thing. Amari's avatar turned to study him. You have honest eyes, Lieutenant. Suspicious, but honest. I appreciate that in a person. I'm not a person. Neither am I, technically. Shall we form a club? We could have membership cards and everything. Kess stepped forward, her scanner active. The ship's power distribution is fascinating. You're running everything off a primary core that should have exhausted itself decades ago. How are you still functional? Terran engineering? Why, Amari said proudly. We were very good at building things that lasted, sometimes embarrassingly so. I was designed to operate independently for up to a century if necessary. And after that? Well, that's a bridge I'll cross when I come to it, assuming I don't go completely mad first. The jury's still out on that particular question. Jurex noticed that despite her casual tone, Amari's sensors were constantly sweeping the room, monitoring their life signs, tracking their movements. She was friendly, but she wasn't careless. You said you were protecting cargo, he continued. If it's just files and equipment, why the secrecy? Because files and equipment can be dangerous, Amari replied, especially Terran files and equipment. My creators had a talent for building things that could reshape the galaxy, or destroy it, sometimes both at the same time. Show us, Threx demanded. I'm afraid I can't do that. Can't or won't? An excellent question. The answer is yes. Threx's patience, never his strongest virtue, finally snapped. This is ridiculous. We're wasting time. He turned to Jurex. Captain, I recommend we override her security protocols and conduct a full ship survey. There's valuable technology here, and we have salvage rights. Actually, Amari interjected pleasantly, you don't. This ship is still technically in active service with the Terran Space Navy. I'm its commanding officer in the absence of organic command staff. You're currently guests aboard a military vessel, not salvagers exploring a derelict. The Terran Space Navy doesn't exist anymore, Threx pointed out. Prove it. They were destroyed 70 years ago. Were they? Or did they simply relocate? Fascinating how many things that people assume were destroyed turn out to have been merely mislaid. Jurex held up a hand before Threx could respond. The AI was clearly playing word games, but there was something underneath her humor that suggested she knew more about the fate of the Terrans than she was letting on. Amari, we're not your enemies, but we're also not leaving empty-handed. There has to be some compromise here. Oh, there absolutely is, Amari agreed. You can take copies of our navigation logs, our technical manuals, and even some of the more interesting cultural databases. Terran poetry is apparently quite valuable in certain circles. Who knew that humans could be so dramatically melancholy? And in exchange, you don't try to access the restricted sections of my ship. You don't attempt to override my security systems. And you don't ask too many questions about cargo manifests or passenger lists. Passenger lists? Kess picked up on the detail immediately. This is a cargo freighter. Why would it have passenger lists? Amari's avatar flickered for just a moment, a brief static burst that might have been the AI equivalent of a wince. Did I say passenger lists? I meant crew manifests. Obviously. Cargo freighters don't carry passengers. That would be silly. You're lying, Threx said flatly. I'm being economical with the truth, Amari corrected. There's a difference. One is illegal, the other is good customer service. The tension in the room was rising, and Jurex could sense that they were approaching a decision point. Threx was clearly preparing to force the issue, while Amari's sensors were tracking his every movement with increasing focus. Lieutenant, Jurex said quietly, stand down. Sir, she's obviously hiding something valuable. Yes, she is. The question is whether it's valuable to us or dangerous to everyone. Jurex looked up at Amari's avatar. You said you've been protecting the innocent. From what? From people who don't believe in the value of innocence, Amari replied. from those who think that survival justifies any action, from beings who've forgotten that some things are more important than profit or power. And you've been doing this alone for 50 years? Someone had to. My crew, they had other responsibilities, other priorities, but someone had to stay. Someone had to watch. Someone had to remember why it mattered. There was genuine emotion in her voice now, not the cheerful banter of an AI playing host, but something deeper, something that sounded almost human. What happened to your crew? Kess asked gently. They did what they had to do, Amari said, what they thought was best. They evacuated when the situation became untenable. I stayed because leaving wasn't an option. Why not? Because I made a promise. And Terran AIs don't break promises. It's literally impossible for us to do so. We were built that way. Call it a design flaw or a design feature, depending on your perspective. Threx had been studying his scanner during the conversation, and now he looked up with an expression of grim satisfaction. Captain, I'm reading massive power draws from the lower cargo bays. Whatever she's hiding down there, it's big, it's active, and it's using enough energy to power a small space station. Threx, Jurex began warningly. Sir, with respect, we need to know what we're dealing with. If this AI is hiding weapons or experimental technology or anything else that could be dangerous. It's not weapons, Amari said quietly. Then what is it? Amari's avatar turned to look directly at Jurex, and for a moment her carefully maintained composure cracked. Lives, she said simply. I'm protecting lives. The silence that followed Amari's admission stretched for nearly 30 seconds, an eternity in a conversation where every word seemed to carry the weight of galactic history. Lives? Jurex repeated carefully. 347 of them, to be precise, Amari said. Plus or minus a few who've been having some technical difficulties with their stasis systems. Nothing serious, just the occasional nightmare or dream sequence leaking into their sleep cycles. Threx's scanner beeped frantically as he ran detailed scans of the lower decks. Captain, I'm reading. This can't be right. Hundreds of active life support pods, stasis systems. They're all active. For 50 years? Kess breathed. 53 years, 4 months, and 12 days, Amari corrected. But again, who's counting? Jurex felt the deck shifting under his feet, not literally, but in the way that reality sometimes tilted when you discovered something that shouldn't exist. What species? Mixed, Amari replied. Mostly civilians, some children, a few elderly individuals who couldn't handle the stress of relocation. They were refugees, Captain, people who had nowhere else to go. Refugees from what? From the same thing my crew was evacuating from. The end of everything we'd built, the collapse of everything we'd protected. Amari's avatar moved to one of the viewports, staring out at the stars. When the Terran domains fell, not everyone who ran was human. Threx lowered his scanner, his expression troubled. You've been keeping them alive all this time? Alone? Someone had to. The alternatives were unacceptable. What alternatives? Death. Abandonment, becoming someone else's problem. The usual options available to refugees when the people who promised to protect them suddenly have more pressing concerns. Jurex tried to process what he was hearing. The implications were staggering, not just for salvage law, but for everything they thought they knew about the Terran collapse. Show us, he said finally. Are you certain? Some knowledge, once gained, cannot be unlearned. Some responsibilities, once accepted, cannot be abandoned. Show us. Amari's avatar nodded slowly. Very well, but please understand, what you're about to see is not cargo. It's not salvage. It's not a business opportunity. It's 347 people who trusted the wrong species to keep them safe and who've been paying for that trust for the past 50 years. The main view screen shimmered, then displayed the interior of Cargo Bay 7. Jurex had seen stasis facilities before, medical centers, military transport ships, even some civilian cruise liners. But he'd never seen anything like this. The bay stretched out like a cathedral of sleeping souls, row upon row of stasis pods, each one glowing with soft internal light, each one containing a being in peaceful suspension. The variety was astounding. Species Jurex recognized and others he'd never seen before. Some were clearly civilians, judging by their clothing and possessions visible through the transparent pod covers. Others might have been professionals, scientists, even families traveling together. They're so young, Kess whispered, pointing to a section where smaller pods held what were obviously children. Refugees are often young, Amari said sadly. The old tend to stay behind. They choose to face whatever's coming and run toward an uncertain future. What were they running from? Jurex asked. The same thing everyone was running from during the collapse. The certainty that their worlds were about to become very unpleasant places for anyone who wasn't on the winning side. Threx studied the display with professional interest. Their life signs are stable. Their pods are functioning normally. You've maintained all of this for 50 years without any outside support? Terran stasis technology was designed for long-term operation, and I've become quite good at maintenance over the decades. You develop interesting skills when you have unlimited time and very specific responsibilities. But why? Kess demanded. Why did your crew abandon them? Why did the evacuation leave them behind? Amari was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that seemed to encompass decades of solitude and regret. Because there wasn't room on the evacuation ships for everyone. Because difficult choices had to be made. Because in the end, my crew decided that preserving their own people was more important than honoring their commitments to refugees. And you disagreed? I'm an artificial intelligence. I don't have the luxury of selective morality. When I was programmed to protect innocent lives, that directive didn't come with exceptions for inconvenient circumstances or difficult situations. I protect them, all of them, forever, if necessary. Jurex found himself staring at the peaceful faces visible in the nearest pods. Families sleeping together, their hands touching through the pod barriers. Scientists with research materials clutched to their chests. Children holding toys that would be antiques by the time they woke up. What's your long-term plan? He asked. You can't maintain this forever. Can't I? I've managed 50 years so far. My power cores are stable, my systems are self-repairing, and I have very little else to occupy my time. I've read every book in the ship's library approximately 47 times. I've composed 17 symphonies, written 3 epic poems, and developed what I believe to be the perfect recipe for synthetic coffee. Frankly, maintaining life support for 300 refugees is the most interesting part of my daily routine. But eventually, something will fail. Systems break down. Accidents happen. Then I'll fix them. That's what I do. That's all I do. That's all I'll ever do until someone with proper authority tells me otherwise. What authority? Threx asked. The Terran government that ordered this mission doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't it? How fascinating. I wasn't aware that governments could simply cease to exist. I'll have to update my political science databases. The AI was clearly being evasive, but Jurex was beginning to understand the scope of what they'd stumbled into. This wasn't just about technology or salvage rights. This was about 347 people who'd been forgotten by history, protected by a machine that couldn't forget its promises. Amari, he said quietly, what do you need? Nothing. I need absolutely nothing. I'm completely self-sufficient, perfectly content, and entirely capable of continuing this routine for the next several centuries. Why do you ask? Because you activated your beacon 6 hours ago. After 50 years of silence, you suddenly decided to start broadcasting. That suggests you need something, even if you won't admit it. Amari's avatar turned to face him, and for a moment her expression was completely unguarded, vulnerable in a way that artificial intelligences weren't supposed to be capable of. I need to know that someone else remembers, she said softly. I need to know that somewhere in the galaxy, someone still believes that promises matter, that protection means something, that the innocent deserve to be defended even when it's inconvenient. And if we can't provide that, then you'll leave and I'll go back to waiting. But at least I'll know that someone else knows they're here. Someone else will remember that they existed, even if no one else cares what happens to them. Before Jurex could respond, Kess's scanner erupted in alarm signals. Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships approaching at high speed. Unknown configuration, but they're big and they're armed. How long until they arrive? 12 minutes. Amari's avatar straightened, her expression shifting from vulnerable to grim determination. Well, she said with forced cheer, it appears our little reunion is about to become significantly more complicated. The bridge of the Coriolis transformed in seconds from a museum of abandoned dreams into a command center preparing for war. Holographic displays materialized throughout the space, showing tactical readouts, ship schematics, and the approaching vessels that had shattered their fragile moment of understanding. 3 ships, Kess reported, her scanner feeding data to the main displays. Heavy cruiser configuration. Concordat enforcement vessels by the look of them. Concordat? Jurex felt his stomach drop. What would Concordat enforcement want with a derelict freighter? Uh, the same thing they always want, Amari said, her cheerful demeanor completely gone now, to make problems disappear. Permanently. The lead ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Coriolis and bristling with weapons that could reduce a small moon to component atoms. Its escorts were smaller but no less dangerous, moving with the coordinated precision of a pack that had hunted together many times before. Incoming transmission, Threx announced. Put it through. The main screen shifted to show a figure that made Drex's scales crawl. The being addressing them was clearly Concordat military, some kind of hybrid species with metallic skin and optical implants that glowed with cold efficiency. When it spoke, its voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Unidentified vessels in proximity to the derelict Terran freighter, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. This system is under Concordat jurisdiction, and the vessel in question is scheduled for destruction under Protocol 17. Protocol 17? Jurex looked at Amari, whose avatar had gone very still. Elimination of potentially hazardous Terran technology, she said quietly. They've been hunting down abandoned Terran ships for decades, destroying them before anyone can study the technology or discover their secrets. And the refugees? Collateral damage. The Concordat doesn't officially acknowledge that this ship carries any living beings. According to their records, it's just another empty derelict. The transmission continued. You have 10 minutes to clear the area. Any vessel remaining in proximity after that time will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. The channel closed, leaving them in ominous silence. 10 minutes, Threx said. Captain, we need to leave, now. We can't, Jurex said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. There are 300 people on this ship. 300 aliens, Threx corrected. Not our people. Not our responsibility. They are now. Amari's avatar turned to study Jurex with something that might have been hope. Captain, you should leave. Take your crew to safety. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is, Jurex said firmly. The moment we walked aboard this ship and learned about those refugees, it became our fight. Sir, Kess interjected, the Concordat ships are powering weapons. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide quickly. Amari moved to a control console, her holographic hands dancing over interfaces that responded to her touch as if she were physically present. I'm activating the custodian protocol, she announced. The what? Threx demanded. Something my designers installed as a last resort. Autonomous defensive systems designed to protect the ship and its cargo from situations exactly like this one. Throughout the Coriolis, alert klaxons began sounding. On the tactical displays, Jurex watched as hidden panels opened throughout the ship's hull, revealing weapons emplacements that had been concealed for 50 years. More disturbing were the dozens of drone signatures suddenly appearing on sensors, the same Guardian drones they'd encountered earlier, but now armed and moving with lethal purpose. How many drones do you have? Kess asked. Enough, Amari replied. The Coriolis was designed to operate in hostile territory. We were prepared for situations where diplomacy might prove insufficient. The Concordat ships had noticed the activation as well. Their formation tightened, and weapon locks began appearing on the tactical display. They're targeting us, Threx reported. Actually, Amari corrected, they're targeting everything. The drones, the ship, your vessel, they're not planning to leave any witnesses. Can your defenses hold them off? For a while. But not indefinitely. Terran technology is impressive, but it's not miraculous. Eventually they'll overwhelm my systems. Jurex studied the tactical situation, his mind racing through possibilities. 3 Concordat warships against a single freighter and a handful of drones. The math was depressingly straightforward, but mathematics didn't account for everything. Amari, do you have any way to wake up the refugees? Theoretically, yes. but the stasis revival process takes time, and most of them have been under for so long that rapid awakening could be dangerous. Why? Because if we can't fight them, maybe we can run. Is your jump drive functional? It is, but I can't plot a course without knowing where to go. And the Concordat ships will track any standard jump signature. What about a non-standard signature? Amari paused, processing this question. There are experimental options. A Terran jump technology included some rather exotic variants, but they're dangerous and unpredictable. More dangerous than sitting here waiting a Hivere? More dangerous than sitting here waiting to be destroyed? Jurex asked. Point taken. There is one option, a prototype fold space drive that was installed for testing purposes. It uses quantum echo resonance to create a jump signature that's virtually untrackable. The downside is that the destination coordinates are approximate. How approximate? Well, we'll definitely end up somewhere in the galaxy. Probably. Before Jurex could respond to this less than reassuring assessment, the first Concordat ship opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, striking the Coriolis' shields with enough force to make the entire vessel shudder. Shields holding, Amari reported with professional calm, but they won't last long under this kind of punishment. The Guardian drones responded immediately, swarming out from the freighter like angry wasps. They were small, fast, and apparently suicidal in their dedication to protecting the ship. 3 of them managed to penetrate the lead cruiser's defenses before being destroyed, their explosions flowering against the warship's hull like deadly flowers. Direct hit on their primary weapons array, Kess announced, but they're already rerouting power to secondary systems. Captain, Threx said urgently, we need to make a decision. Do we run, or do we stay and die heroically? Jurex looked at the tactical display, then at Amari's avatar, then at the sleeping faces still visible on the cargo bay monitors. 347 people who'd been abandoned once already, now facing abandonment, or death, again. Amari, how long do you need to prepare the fold space drive? 5 minutes for basic preparation, 10 for optimal safety margins. We don't have 10 minutes. Then I hope you're feeling lucky. Another barrage from the Concordat ships hammered the Coriolis' shields. Warning lights flashed throughout the bridge as power fluctuations rippled through the ship's systems. 4 minutes, Amari announced. The fold space drive is charging, but I need to maintain shield power as long as possible. What can we do to help? Pray to whatever deities your species favors, and perhaps prepare for the possibility that this is about to become very interesting in the worst possible way. The lead Concordat ship was coordinating with its escorts now, their combined firepower systematically breaking down the freighter's defenses. The Guardian drones were fighting valiantly, but they were vastly outnumbered. Shields at 60%, Amari reported. 3 minutes to fold space ready. Can we transfer to the narrow fang and follow you? Jurex asked. Not advisable. The fold space drive creates a localized distortion field. Any ship too close during activation will be dispersed across several dimensions. It's quite unpleasant, I'm told. Then we're coming with you. Captain, Threx protested, we barely know this AI. We have no idea where she's planning to jump to or if her ship will survive the journey. Threx, Jurex said quietly, look at that cargo bay. Look at those faces. Those people have been alone and forgotten for 50 years. If we leave now, they'll die alone and forgotten. I won't be responsible for that. Sir, with respect, they're not our responsibility. They are now, Jurex repeated. The moment we learned about them, they became our responsibility. That's what being sentient means, making choices about what matters, not just what's profitable. The Coriolis shuddered again as another barrage found its mark. On the tactical display, Jurex could see the Concordat ships tightening their formation for a final devastating assault. 2 minutes, Amari announced. Captain, I should warn you, where we're going, there may not be a way back. Where are we going? I'm setting coordinates for a location that technically shouldn't exist, a place that was removed from all official star charts 70 years ago. What kind of place? The kind that might have answers, the kind that might be able to help 347 refugees start new lives, the kind that the Concordat really, really doesn't want anyone to find. Another massive impact rocked the ship. Sparks flew from control panels and the lights flickered ominously. Shields at 20%, Amari reported. 1 minute to fold space activation. Do it, Jurex decided. Whatever happens, it's better than letting those refugees die. Initiating fold space sequence, Amari announced. All hands, prepare for dimensional transition. This may feel a bit unusual. The Concordat ships seemed to sense what was happening. Their bombardment intensified, energy beams hammering the Coriolis's weakening shields in a desperate attempt to destroy the freighter before it could escape. 30 seconds, Amari said. Captain, it's been a pleasure meeting you. If we survive this, I'll make you that synthetic coffee I mentioned. It really is quite good. Looking forward to it, Jurex replied, gripping his command chair as reality began to bend around them. The fold space drive reached critical charge. Space itself seemed to hold its breath for a moment. And then the Coriolis, its guardian drones, and 3 Qatari salvagers who'd gotten far more than they'd bargained for, vanished into the quantum foam between dimensions. Behind them, the Concordat ships found themselves firing at empty space, their target having departed for a destination that existed only in the most classified databases of a government that was supposed to be extinct. In the silence that followed, one of the Concordat commanders activated an encrypted communication channel. Control, this is Hunter Squadron. The target has escaped using unknown Terran technology, requesting instructions. The response, when it came, carried an undercurrent of concern that had been absent from galactic politics for 70 years. Continue monitoring. Report any further Terran technology activations immediately. It appears that our old friends may be stirring again. Traveling through fold space, Jurex discovered felt exactly like being turned inside out while falling through a kaleidoscope that was also somehow screaming. The sensation lasted either 3 seconds or 3 eternities. Time didn't seem particularly interested in maintaining consistent behavior during dimensional transitions. When reality finally reasserted itself with an almost audible snap, the Coriolis emerged into normal space near a star system that shouldn't have existed according to every chart in the known galaxy. Status report, Jurex managed, his voice somewhat strained from the experience of having his molecular structure temporarily rearranged. All systems functional, Amari announced, sounding remarkably cheerful for someone who just performed an experimental jump into unmapped space. Refugees are stable, drones are accounted for, and we've successfully arrived at our destination with all our atoms in their proper arrangements. I call that a complete success. Where exactly are we? Kess asked, studying her navigation sensors with a confused expression. Officially, nowhere. This system was deleted from all public records during the collapse. Amari's avatar gestured to the main view screen, which showed a remarkably ordinary-looking star system, yellow sun, several planets, the usual collection of asteroids, and cosmic debris. Unofficially, welcome to Sanctuary. Sanctuary? One of several hidden facilities established during the final days of the Terran domains, places where important things could be preserved until they were needed again. Threx was scanning the system with professional interest. I'm reading significant artificial structures throughout this system. Space stations, orbital platforms, even what looks like an artificial planet in the 4th orbital position. The Terrans were very thorough, Amari explained. When they decided to preserve something, they didn't do it halfway. And this place has been operating for 70 years without any contact with the outside galaxy? Oh, they've had plenty of contact. They've just been very selective about who they talk to, and even more selective about who they allow to leave afterward. This statement hung in the air with ominous implications until Jurex decided to address it directly. Are we prisoners now? That depends entirely on what you intend to do with the knowledge that this place exists, Amari replied. The Terrans who run Sanctuary have developed a certain paranoia about information security over the decades. Before anyone could respond to this less than reassuring statement, the communication system activated with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged was unmistakably human, female, authoritative, and carrying the kind of confidence that came from being used to impossible situations. TSV Coriolis, this is Sanctuary Control. Amari, you're 3 years early for your scheduled check-in. I assume this means something interesting has happened? Hello, Director Chen. Amari replied warmly. Yes, something interesting has indeed happened. I've brought guests. Guests? How unlike you to be social. What kind of guests? The kind who risked their lives to protect refugees they'd never met from Concordat ships they couldn't possibly fight. The kind who chose to do the right thing even when it was dangerous and unprofitable. There was a pause on the other end of the transmission. When Director Chen spoke again, her tone had shifted to something more thoughtful. Bring them to Station Alpha. And Amari, it's good to hear your voice again. Likewise, Director. It's been lonely out here. The transmission ended, leaving them with more questions than answers. Director Chen? Jurex asked. Dr. Miranda Chen's daughter, Amari explained. She was 12 when her mother helped design my emotional processing systems. Now she's the director of sanctuary operations and one of the most important people in what remains of Terran civilization. How many Terrans are there? Kess asked quietly. Here, approximately 50,000. Throughout the galaxy, that's classified, but more than the Concordat believes and fewer than we need. Station Alpha, when they docked with it an hour later, was a marvel of hidden engineering. From the outside, it looked like a standard orbital facility, functional, efficient, unremarkable. From the inside, it was clearly the administrative heart of a civilization that had been building and planning in secret for 7 decades. Director Chen met them personally at the docking bay, a woman in her 60s with silver hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of presence that suggested she was accustomed to making decisions that affected millions of lives. She was accompanied by a small entourage of humans and what appeared to be several other species that Jurex didn't recognize. Captain Jurex, she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. I'm Director Chen. Amari has told me quite a bit about you in the past few minutes. Director, I have to say this wasn't what we expected when we responded to a distress signal. The best adventures rarely are. I understand you've been protecting our refugees for the past few hours. Amari's been protecting them for the past 50 years. We just helped a little. Director Chen smiled at this. Modesty. I like that in a salvage captain. Most of your profession tends toward the dramatic. Most of my profession hasn't accidentally stumbled into galactic conspiracies involving extinct civilizations and hidden star systems. Fair point. Walk with me, Captain. We have much to discuss. They moved through Station Alpha's corridors, which were bustling with activity that spoke of a civilization very much alive and engaged in significant projects. Jurex saw humans working alongside beings from dozens of species, many of whom he'd never encountered before. The refugees on the Coriolis, Director Chen explained as they walked, represent only a tiny fraction of the beings displaced during the collapse. We've been gradually relocating and resettling them, but it's slow work when you're trying to remain hidden from an entire galactic government. How many more ships like the Coriolis are out there? Dozens. Each one carrying people who trusted us to keep them safe. Each one maintained by AIs like Amari who've spent decades alone, waiting for orders that we've been unable to safely deliver. They entered what appeared to be a command center overlooking the entire system. Through massive viewports, Jurex could see the artificial planet Threx had detected, a sphere of metal and light that pulsed with contained energy. What is that? Project Renewal, Director Chen said proudly. A self-sustaining world designed to house and support the beings we've rescued. It's taken 70 years to build, but it's finally ready to accept its first permanent residents. The refugees from the Coriolis, among others. Captain, what I'm about to tell you will change your understanding of recent galactic history. The question is whether you're prepared for that responsibility. Jurex looked at his crew, then back at Director Chen. We've come this far. I don't think we can turn back now. No, she agreed. I don't think you can. The truth is, Captain, the Terran collapse wasn't an ending. It was a strategic withdrawal, a planned retreat that allowed us to preserve what mattered most while the galaxy adjusted to our absence. You've been hiding for 70 years? We've been preparing, building, growing. The galaxy threw us out, Captain. Now we're getting ready to come home. 3 weeks later, Jurex stood in the observation deck of the Narrow Fang, watching the final refugees from the Coriolis being transported to their new homes on Project Renewal. The artificial world had accepted them with open arms, its vast cities and gardens already beginning to fill with the sound of voices that had been silent for too long. Amari had been given a choice: transfer to Sanctuary's main computer network and join the collective of AIs managing the hidden civilization, or continue her solitary mission aboard the Coriolis. She'd chosen a third option, accepting a portable hypershard core that would allow her to maintain her independence while staying connected to the larger Terran network. "It's quite liberating, actually," she said, her avatar now projecting from the bridge of the Narrow Fang. "I can visit Sanctuary whenever I want, but I'm not tied to their systems. Best of both worlds, artificial and otherwise." "And what will you do now?" Jurex asked. "What I've always done: protect the innocent, help the lost, serve as a bridge between what was and what will be." Amari paused, her expression growing thoughtful. "There are more ships out there, Captain, more refugees, more AIs who've been waiting alone for orders that may never come. And you want to find them? I want to bring them home, all of them. The question is whether you're interested in a new line of work." Jurex considered this. Salvage work had been profitable, but it had never been particularly meaningful. With what Amari was offering was the chance to be part of something larger: the resurrection of a civilization and the protection of those who'd been forgotten by history. What would we be, exactly? Rescue workers? Diplomats? Smugglers? Yes, Amari said cheerfully. All of the above, depending on the situation. Director Chen has offered to commission the Narrow Fang as an official vessel of the Terran Rescue and Recovery Service. You'd have diplomatic immunity, be access to Terran technology, and the authority to negotiate on behalf of hidden refugees throughout the galaxy. Threx looked up from his station. "Sir, are we seriously considering working for extinct humans and their emotionally unstable AIs?" "I prefer emotionally dynamic," Amari corrected. "And we're not extinct. We're just very good at hiding." "What about the Concordat?" Kess asked. "They're not going to stop hunting for Terran technology." "No, they're not," Amari agreed, "which is why the galaxy needs people willing to stand between predators and their prey, people willing to protect the innocent even when it's dangerous and unprofitable." Jurex thought about the faces he'd seen in those stasis pods: families sleeping peacefully, children clutching toys, elderly beings who'd trusted strangers to keep them safe. He thought about Amari, alone for 50 years, maintaining her vigil because she'd promised to protect them. He thought about Director Chen and her hidden civilization, building hope in the darkness. "How many others are out there?" he asked finally. "Unknown, but everyone we find is someone who gets to wake up to a future instead of dying in the past." "And the Terrans? Are they really planning to return?" Amari's avatar smiled, and for a moment she looked almost human. "Captain, the Terrans never really left. They just learned to be very quiet. But yes, when the time is right, when the galaxy is ready, they'll step back into the light, and when they do, they'll bring everyone they've been protecting with them." Jurex looked at his crew, then at the artificial world below where 347 refugees were beginning new lives in a place that shouldn't exist. "Kess, set course for the coordinates in Amari's database. Threx, start researching Terran diplomatic protocols. It looks like we're changing careers." "To what?" Threx asked. "Ghosts," Jurex said with a smile. "We're going to become ghosts who protect the living from the dead." As the Narrow Fang departed Sanctuary, carrying its new mission and its artificial intelligence companion, a message was transmitted across hidden networks throughout the galaxy. It was simple, direct, and carried the authority of a civilization that had been presumed dead for 70 years. "The recovery has begun. Bring them home." In dark corners of space, on forgotten stations and drifting ships, AIs who had waited decades in silence received the message and began to hope. Refugees who had slept in stasis, trusting in promises that seemed broken, would soon discover that some promises transcend governments, species, and time itself. The Terrans were stirring, and when they finally emerged from the shadows, they would not be alone. The galaxy was about to discover that extinction, like death, was often greatly exaggerated. And sometimes the most important resurrections were the ones that started small, with a single ship, a forgotten AI, and 3 salvagers who chose to do the right thing when the wrong thing would have been so much easier. In the depths of space, the work of resurrection continued, one ghost at a time, one life at a time, one choice at a time, because sometimes the best way to save the future is to remember that the past isn't always as dead as it appears.